good old Game of Thrones, huh? Welcome, everyone, to the PvP Live podcast. I am your host, Jason, accompanied by PvP Live staff members, Aridin, Eldakar, and Davis. Starting with you, Aridin. How you doing today, buddy?
Pretty good today. Dealt with some difficult children earlier.
Yeah.
Perks of being a father, but everything's good now. Ready to do the show. How about you guys?
Yeah, at least you got a fresh couple of kittens running around your lap right there.
Yeah. Crawling all over.
Eldakar, how was your weekend? How are you doing today?
My weekend was great, and I'm doing good. I'm happy to be back on here. Unfortunately, I do not have a cat running around. I kind of wish I did.
Yeah,
no, you don't. Well, maybe you do. They're okay.
Are you regretting getting that cat, Danny?
No, they're cool.
Pets are a lot of work. Davis, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 a.m. where you are. I don't even know. How are you doing? Feeling awake, alive?
It's 2 a.m. Yeah, I'm good. I did a bunch of stuff today. I leveled up all my professions in my warrior today.
Wow.
I did
How much
some
that cost you?
I think about 20k in total.
What professions are you talking about?
Enchanting and blacksmithing.
Ooh, and those got to be
more money than I have.
Yeah, those got to be the most expensive professions to actually power level as well, too.
Well, Trillabarton had them. I needed because I want to be as good as him, man.
Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want to be? Anyways, jumping right into the first topic of the day, and this was released a couple days ago by Blizzard.
You never got to Jeff. Oh, you did get to Jeff.
I did.
What am I thinking?
I did.
He was just so short.
That was it was a real quick.
He was
one.
short. He was
talking about your cast. Anyways, Blizzard has announced some details on the Warlords of Draenor beta opt-in, pre-purchase rewards, and the level 90 character boost. They said the expansion will be available for pre-purchase digitally soon, with a TM on it, which I thought was actually kind of funny. If you purchase a digital deluxe edition, you're going to receive the pet and mount as soon as you pre-purchase it. And when you pre-purchase either digital edition, you will receive your level 90 boost at the time of purchase. Now, this is a huge deal because, obviously, when they announced it at BlizzCon, everyone just thought, when the expansion comes out in August, September, October, who knows, then that's when you would be getting your free 90. But they're actually going to be giving it to you as soon as you pre-purchase it, which is actually a pretty good move on their part, too, to continue, bringing a lot of players back to the game, getting ready, getting those sub numbers up. It's a really big deal. Aridin, going to you first. What do you think about this, the pre-purchase announcement?
I think it's actually really cool. I think it would have been maybe kind of weird if it was once Warlords of Draenor came out, because I don't know what gear they're planning on putting on these characters or whatever, but for the people that are currently playing or thinking about coming back, it gives everybody an opportunity to, get used to the class, kind of like feel out the changes, get some gear, do some things, PvP, whatever, raid. So I think it's a good call on their part to do that when you pre-order instead of on Warlords launch.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Like I said, too, it's Danny, is that something you kind of expected? I don't think any of us expected that, right? Weren't you thinking you were going to get it when it was released?
Yeah, I actually wasn't. From what they said at BlizzCon, I wasn't expecting to get a free 90 until after Warlords was launched.
Now, let me ask you this. Are you a digital edition deluxe member? Are you going to be getting the extra mount and the extra pet, or are you just going for the straight expansion?
Every expansion since I think Wrath, this has kind of come up, and I've always opted not to go that route because I know that as soon as I log in, everybody's going to be on the mount or with the pet or whatever. So it's kind of like, for me, seeing so many people with the same thing kind of like loses that like special value,
Sure.
So I opt out of it. I mean, it's a few extra bucks. Although going back, I always wish that I did. I wish I had that Frost Wormling from Wrath. That was my favorite expansion. It'd be really cool to have, but no, I typically don't do that.
I guarantee that Blizzard will probably see an increased, return on those digital deluxe purchases. I bet a lot more people are going to be buying them just to get that in advance, rather than getting it when the actual release is coming out. But if you can get them out,
cool.
say, in a couple
weeks. It is cool that
weeks,
they do it when you buy it.
Yeah, it's a very nice feature. Eldakar, going down to you, the pre-purchase announcement, free 90s possibly coming very soon. Who knows, within the next month maybe. What do you think about this?
I think it's great, and for the reasons that they stated, it gives people a chance to get to know the new class, and that was one of the concerns that I brought up when that we were talking about this on a previous podcast. Is people aren't going to know what they're doing. This gives people an opportunity to learn the new class, figure out if they like it, figure out if it's the first class that they want to level to 100 in the new expansion. But I am a little surprised at the same time. I mean, a free boost to 90 when the max level is 100 is a little different than a free boost to 90 when the max level is 90, because you're not getting close to the max level and then having to figure everything out as you get those last few levels. You're just going straight to max level. But with what is, I'm sure, a lot of people bleeding out of the game right now, as everything tends to slow down at the very end of the last patch of the expansion, it'll give people an opportunity to try out new classes that they've never tried before, or level up to 90 new classes that they've been leveling and they just never quite got there. I think it's a good thing all around.
Something we're going to be talking about shortly too is, random battlegrounds. Jeff, you just brought up a great point. There's going to be people jumping in this game that they could potentially have never played before. Getting that 90, jumping into random battlegrounds, and we all know about the, people, I shouldn't say, a lot of people don't understand basic objectives in Warsong Gulch or Arathi Basin, for example. So you're going to be having all these 90s jumping in there. I mean, how do you think that's going to affect that?
I think as soon as this option goes live to get these free 90s, we're going to have a lot of people in random battlegrounds with no idea what they're doing. But I don't think it will be too bad a few months down the road.
Right.
But that first week or two, it's going to be chaos.
Yeah, I think... Oh, go ahead.
I think we will continue to see people joining in long term that have no idea what they're doing, but I would encourage people to go check out the quick 5-second summaries that Olivia Grace put up over at WoW Insider this week. They've got brief summaries of a few battlegrounds. I'm not sure if she's covered all of them yet, but it's a good way to understand what you're doing and not be a total noob when you're first going in.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a really well done article by Olivia. Also, too, I think probably the biggest problems, even outside of PvP, is LFR. Imagine what's going to happen in LFR when you get all these brand new 90s in there. Or, I mean, think about this. Think about tanks. Think about Paladin warrior tanks jumping in there in LFR. I mean, it's going to be... I don't know if did they think about this?
Well, we don't know for sure if they're going to have starter tanking gear or if they're just going to have like DPS gear or healing gear if you're a paladin.
Right.
I'm hoping they don't give them starter tank gear, because you really don't want to have a tank that has never played WoW before trying to tank an endgame instance. That is not going to work.
Well, now, hold on a second. So this is, we're talking about as if these players were brand new to WoW, right? Jumping into Battleground.
Right.
Okay, so don't you think they might be, if they've never played before and they get a brand new 90, they know nothing, I think they're going to be a little bit more overwhelmed with trying to learn everything that's going on. And they're really not going to know what LFR is, I don't think.
I agree with that, but you know there's going to be some people
Sure.
never played World of Warcraft, bought this, jumping into tank, one of the wings of, LFR, and it could be a big disaster.
Danny, here's how I see that going down. You've got one person that's been playing the game for a long time. He uses his free level 90 to get a new class that he doesn't know how to play. And then he enlists his friend to buy the game that's never played it before. Exactly. Good chance to try it.
Yep.
Hey, dude, just make a tank. We'll get instant queues for LFR. It'll be awesome.
Yeah, a tank and a healer, too.
And
healer has no idea what he's doing in it.
Yeah, maybe. Perhaps. I don't know.
I could totally see this happening.
Yeah, it'll be really... Elgar, I'm glad you brought this up, because I really wasn't thinking in that kind of mindset where, it's not the level cap. The level cap's not 100 now. So you could actually jump in the game and start progressing through endgame content. I have no idea what you're doing. Davis, going down to you. What do you think about this pre-purchase announcement? Free 90s, soon as you pre-purchase it, soon, they're saying. So that soon, in my opinion, I would say within the next month.
Well, now, hold on, just to jump in real quick, that little TM next to soon, that's Blizzard soon. That means...
Right.
Soon.
Yeah, which I thought was hilarious, too. But yeah, soon could
Who knows?
be very shortly. Davis, what do you think about it?
I'm not as worried as you guys are at the moment about random new people coming to World of Warcraft and being level 90. I think the majority of people at the moment that would take advantage of that have probably played WoW for some period of time, probably quite recently. I think most people that would be buying it now will be people that either have already played WoW or know someone that plays WoW, and they're quite good at it, or at least not as terrible as you guys are worried about. I mean, do you think new people are going to be getting into WoW at the moment? There's no big ad push going on,
Well,
is there?
Maybe if we had Mr. T,
I mean, yeah.
That was
If
great.
Mr. T
Mohawk.
comes back, then
That was a
think you're
great
right.
set of
maybe we should
commercials.
business.
You know,
But,
You're right, JD. The majority of people joining up are probably going to be veterans that are making a second or a third or fourth or fifth level 90 rather than brand new players.
right.
But I think even the people that understand how to play the game that are jumping onto fresh level 90s of classes that they've maybe never played it before in their entire time playing the game. I mean, I've been playing the game since pretty much launch, and there's still a few classes out there that I would have absolutely no idea what I'm doing on other than a vague understanding of what their different abilities do. So, I mean, I could jump on a druid and start moonfiring everybody. I don't know how effective that would be.
Well, Davis, to your
Three
point too,
Gs, I guess.
Davis, I do agree with you. I don't think there'll be a huge number of people just jumping into the game. But Eldakar brought up a great point. A buddy that's been playing for the past 3 years wants his friend to get into it, telling him, "Hey, you can jump in a game right with me. You can jump in an LFR right with me right now. Go purchase it." Actually, that's probably one of the biggest problems I bet they're going to see. Instant queues too, Eldakar, right? Yeah, come and roll a tank and you can get instant queues for me in LFR. This will be a blast.
That's what I'm worried about. People
Yeah.
are going to say, tanks have the fastest queues. If you do that, we can get instant queues for everything.
Right.
let's just
And
hope those
downhill
friends are. Let's just hope those friends are good friends that actually help them learn how to play. And don't.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Because you got to think too. If you're the friend trying to get an instant queue out of your buddy who just started playing, you're gonna have a bad experience as well because he's not gonna know what to do, right? So.
That's true.
Yeah,
Some people don't think that far ahead.
Exactly.
Well,
that's the problem.
That's
Davis, I didn't ask Eldakar, I'll go back to you, but Digital Deluxe Edition, are you going to be purchasing it for the mount and the pet? Is that any interest to you?
Does it give any advantages with like beta testing of anything? I mean, I'm interested in beta testing of stuff, but
Me too.
apart from that, I don't really. I mean, the mounts and stuff are cool, but not what I pay for. If you know what I mean.
Personally, I guess it depends on what... I don't really care about pets, I'll say that. But it depends on the mount for myself, personally. Jeff, Eldakar, what do you think? I mean, are you going to go for the Digital Deluxe?
It seems unlikely. I'm a huge Blizzard fan. And if you guys can see the posters behind me on the wall here, they're all Blizzard posters and stuff. But I've always found what's in those digital deluxe editions and even the physical collector's editions to be a little overwhelming for the increase in price. Mm-hmm. And I've bought a few of them, but for the most part, I just can't justify it.
Because, I mean, what are we talking here? We're probably going to say a $40 expansion and then a $60 digital deluxe. That's generally how it goes, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, 50
I think
or 60.
the mount has to be useful in some way other than just being a good-looking mount. Otherwise, not that many people will buy it. Although, I mean, who knows how many people bought the collector's edition of MOP? I don't really know.
Well, that's a good point.
JD.
I mean, when MOP first came out, I saw those what do they call Kian? Is that how you say it? Quillen? I don't know. Whatever the word is.
The Quillins.
Quillen, yeah.
Yeah, the Quillins.
But yeah, I mean, you
The
saw those all over the
pumps.
place, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I don't see any of them anymore.
Never.
Yeah, so
I actually kind of like that mount, too.
It didn't really do it for me,
It
but
wasn't one of my favorite ones, but it's not bad. Hey, what about the new two-headed dragon? Anyone pick that up yet? I don't even know what it's
I
called.
think that thing's ugly.
Yeah, it's not that. For me personally, it's not that appealing looking.
I think it's cool, but personally, I got a family and a budget. You know what I mean?
Right.
$25 for mount.
For a mount,
Not my thing.
I love the aesthetics of the PvP mounts, the new PvP ground mounts,
yeah.
but I just think that new two-headed chimera thing is just ugly.
Chimera, that's what I was looking for. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that's what it's called, but it's what it looks like.
Close enough. Moving on to the next topic, talking about the arena rating floor. Okay, Many people have been worried that the new individual rating system, combined with region-wide arena ladders, would inflate the amount of people eligible for titles, making those titles, kind of less prestigious now. A few days ago, do I have to give his title? I think everyone here knows who Holinka is. Blizzard senior PvP designer Brian Holinka stated on Twitter that they will be only considering players with a rating of 1,000 or higher when determining these rewards. So, I mean, this is... Aridin, you actually wrote the article. If Jay could link it in chat for us. He already did. Thank you. What do you think about this 1,000 minimum rating?
It sounds good, right? Like, so now you're not counting everybody 1,000 and below, which is like 200,000 people, give or take. Right. That's an estimation. But going by my list here from the API, it's a lot of people that aren't going to even be considered for titles or calculated in. But the thing that a lot of people were worried about was a few months ago a thread popped up on Arena Junkies saying that if the titles were calculated now, this is where Glad would be, this is where Rank 1 would be, and the ratings were quite a bit lower than we're used to seeing. I mean, we're talking like 2,200 for Gladiator, when in the past seasons it's been 24, maybe 2,500. So it was kind of like shocking to everybody, like, wow, Glad is so low. But in this new floor of 1,000 doesn't really do much to help that out. I mean, it pushes up just a baby bump higher, but it's still not that high. But the thing a lot of people are not really seeing here is that you're still in the top 0.5% of all people playing World of Warcraft. I mean, rating's kind of arbitrary, right? Like, it's that percentage you got to look at and not the rating attached to it. Because, I mean, there was a time I guess kind of long ago now where, people were getting Glad without even being 2,100 in BC. I think a lot of people are kind of worried that it's losing its prestige or whatever, but it's not. Got to stop looking at the rating attached to it and look at what it actually means. You're in the top 0.5% of people getting Gladiator.
Right. So, well, I mean, you're looking at the US 3v3 ladder, right? You're looking at about 194 people are going to obtain the Grievous Gladiator title, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, roughly. Like right now-ish.
That's a pretty small amount.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it all really depends. If you take it by BGs, I think we had 13 battle groups before this region-wide thing. So right. 13 times, a lot of teams had stacked their teams. We'll just go on an average and say 4. Some teams had 6 people getting rank 1 on one team. But I don't know. I don't know how it all equates out. I didn't do that math, but I think it's going to be about average, about what the same amount people are used to seeing.
Eldikar, going down to you, our resident math expert. The arena rating floor. I mean, what do you think about this?
I completely agree with Danny, with Aridin. It really doesn't matter what your rating cutoff is. The ratings are completely arbitrary, and they don't really make any difference at all. People naturally reference them because that's a common frame of reference that they can use to relate to past seasons. But with the removal of battle groups and everything, the relative difficulty of different ratings has changed. And like Danny said, all that really matters is the percentage that you're lying in. And if you're in the top 0.5% of players with 2,200 rating versus the top 0.5% of players with 3,000 rating, it really doesn't matter. The point is, everything in PvP is all relative. It's all how good are you compared to the next guy. And as long as you're still in that top 0.5%, it's still just as prestigious as it was before. In fact, I don't know, maybe with more people playing and more titles going out, you'll see it more common, especially on the higher population realms. But it's still just as prestigious because there's more people competing.
Right.
And you can't forget that.
No, let's not forget as well that I don't have this information right in front of me at the moment, but I'm pretty sure the number I saw was like 23% increase in people doing Arena 3v3, something along those. Don't quote me because I don't have the information, but a pretty substantial increase of people actually getting in there and doing 3v3, so that's going to affect it as well.
Athlete's actually in our chat right now. He brought up a great point. He said rank 1 was around 2,200 to 2,300 on a lot of battle groups in Burning Crusade. He He said a lot of people would get Gladiator without even having their PvP shoulders.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty wild. I mean, come on.
Yeah. On some of the
Yeah.
smaller battle groups, you could find a little niche, especially in like 5v5 where there was low participation, and you could get Gladiator with really, really low ratings compared to the rest of the battle groups.
And let's not forget 2v2 offered Gladiator as well. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I mean, throughout, I think like starting in Wrath and building through Cataclysm and into early MOP, you know, the ratings just became so inflated, and people just really got used to seeing these high 24, 2500, you know, was cut off for Glad. So it's just kind of a deflation, really, is all it is.
Davis, going to you. What do you think about the changes to individual rating systems, region-wide ladders, and the floor, basically the minimum?
Well, I mean, overall, like I kind of agree with everything that Athlete and everyone else has said. Is that I remember like titles back in TVC and stuff going around that rating, and even in Wrath, like I remember people like in early, I think it was early Wrath, that were around like 2500 that were getting rank 1. So it's the numbers that people are getting these ratings at aren't obscene numbers. It's just that we've had some seasons where people have gone really, really, really high, and apparently people are used to people being 2800 and 2600 and stuff like that. But I think the numbers that they're going at are kind of okay numbers, and like everyone says, it's in comparison to other people. So you're still a Gladiator. I would like to see if the numbers of people that are receiving the title is that much different to how it was before, if that makes sense. Like the total amount of people in the EU that are getting titles at the moment, I wonder if it's the same as what they were getting before when they were battle.
I mean, it is pretty similar. I kind of did some quick math the other day, and it's not that far off, really, the number of people. And another thing you got to take into consideration, too, so, like, on the U.S., BG9 is the, Tichondrius and Bloodlust is the most competitive battle group. It's been for a very long time now. You could have had people getting Gladiator at 2400 on a much less competitive battle group, but it could have maybe only been in comparison 2200 on BG9, right? Like, there's no really way to know. So yeah, it is what it is. It's a percentage base. It has nothing to do with the number you end up with at the end of the season.
Exactly. They could double everybody's rating right now, and it wouldn't make any difference. It's just a number. And you really can't compare a rating in one season to a rating in the next, especially with the kind of changes that we've had to the fundamental structure of the way Arena works.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how pretty much everything plays out as far as Glad titles and the distribution of those go. Moving on to the next topic, Lore posted on the official forums that they plan on revisiting PvP power in Warlords. Jay Exil, one of our bloggers, he's in our chat right now. He wrote an excellent article, and I'm hoping he will link it for us. Basically, he said instead of a flat percentage increase to your normal damage healing in PvP, it'll be a bonus amount of your spec's primary stat. Strength, agility, intellect, spirit, whatever. And basically the reasoning behind that is it lets them keep PvP and PvE elements closer together while still ensuring PvP gear remains best for PvP and PvE gear remains best for PvE. It's a really interesting topic, and this is something we've kind of touched base on before. I'm actually going to start this time with Eldakar. What do you think about PvP power in general in the state that it's in right now, and what Lore basically posts on the forums?
Well, I'd have to disagree a little bit with what Lore said about this change would allow them to bring PvP gear and PvE gear closer together. I think that you could do that with a variety of different implementations for PvP power, including the current one. But it's just there's such a huge gap right now between PvP and PvE item levels, and I don't think that it had anything to do with the design of PvP power. I think That was just another decision that they made for completely unrelated reasons. But I do like the change overall. It does make PvP power significantly easier for players to understand.
Right.
It's really easy to understand the idea that this is just extra strength or this is extra intellect. Something that you already have a quantified value in your mind for. Whereas PvP power right now, with its percentage-based damage increase, it can be a little strange to people, and it's hard to really quantify how its value stacks up against your primary stats or secondary stats. So it's confusing for people, and
it's really hard, I find, to grasp the effects of PvP power now. You don't really see it so it's weird. It's a weird stat now. Somebody in chat actually asked, and I want to kind of bring this up, is what about classes that double dip on primary stats? So for anybody not sure what that means, for example, like agility-based classes, hunters, rogues, they get both agility, which gives them attack power, and they get crit from it. So that's the idea of double dipping. And that's a good point, really.
That's one of the major concerns that I've had when I was doing some theory crafting with this earlier. And I brought them up to Malink on Twitter. He doesn't seem as concerned about them, but we'll have to see how it plays out, because different classes have, and different specs as well, have various different weighting for primary stats. To some classes, particularly Agi users, primary stats are enormously valuable. And to people like warriors, they may not be as valuable compared to things like crit. I mean, it may still be number one, but the gap, it just isn't as large. So if you add significant amounts of these primary stats through PvP power, it could make PvP gear significantly more valuable for the stats that have higher weights for their primary stats, or for the classes that have higher weights for their primary stats. And in order to get enough PvP power to make up the difference between an entire tier, for instance, going from heroic to mythical, you would have to have an enormous amount of PvP power to make up that entire gap on its own, and that could mean a huge amount of primary stats. But if they don't do something like that, we could end up with another situation where mythical PvE gear is better in world PvP than the highest PvP gear.
Well, Eldacar, you brought up another great point. As a theory crafter yourself, this whole change kind of makes PvP power less confusing. A percentage base increased, it's kind of hard to, figure out, to quantify. But, raw stats themselves are a lot easier to actually understand. Davis, going to you. I mean, what do you think about these changes to PvP power and how it's going to affect playing?
I'm kind of the same. I kind of worry about it because I worry that they're going to have to put so much PvP power on PvP gear to keep it kind of better in world PvP that we're going to end up with kind of number bloat again.
But now, are you guys taking into account the item squish as well with figuring this out, or are you just looking at it right now?
The item squish shouldn't make any difference.
Yeah. Okay.
Like even then, like you still might end up having people with so much PvP power that they still can take away half your health bar in one global, like quite easily, or something like that. Like that's everything. I don't know. That's kind of everything.
I think the speed of combat and the amount of damage that people can do is going to be balanced separately, and I think that's a whole nother conversation. PvP power is really just, it's a tool to make PvP gear better for PvP than it is for PvE, and where the damage and health and healing sits will really be something that's more overarching.
I don't know. I just, like, if they have to, because they have to put enough on it for it to be as good as mythical gear or whatever it is, right?
Well,
or
not
maybe
necessarily.
they're not even aiming for that, because I think what their kind of goal with mythical gear is like, which I mean, this is something they've said for a while now, but it's not going to be that common, right? They don't find mythical gears. The people that are doing mythical raids and getting the gear from it are going to be so focused on that they're not going to have time to PvP, right? That's kind of like their goal. So maybe just going for like heroic levels is probably what they're going to end up doing.
Yeah, and I think that's what they're going to end up doing. If I was going to call it right now, I'd think that the Conquest gear is going to be the same item level as the new Heroic, which would be the second highest tier. And the PvP power will put it over the top, so Conquest gear will be better than Heroic PvE gear for World PvP. But if they're not doing any kind of item level limitations or anything to give PvP gear an advantage in instanced PvP, then we'd really have to have PvP gear be better than mythical gear. Otherwise, mythical gear would be the best for instanced PvP. And that wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
So either they'd have to use two separate mechanics, like the item level limitations and PvP power, or they'd have to put a huge amount of PvP power onto the gear.
Danny, I know you kind of commented on everyone's talking points, but overall, what do you think about these changes to PvP power?
I think right now it's like, a lot of people are getting caught up on looking at just this PvP power change, right, that they're proposing, but really, like, it all at different times we've gotten tons of information on all these other stats they're changing, right? Like no more haste breakpoints, reduced crit to 150%. So like all these little bits of information are being scattered. I think what needs to happen is probably something we should get on here at PvP Live is kind of compiling all these little stat changes into one nice, neat place, right? So people can kind of evaluate it all together. Mm-hmm. Because I think a lot of that stuff's being missed out on these arguments. So, so for example, double dipping classes like rogues getting crit, for example, crits might not be 200% in Warlords. It might only be 150%. So who knows how it's all going to shake out. I think they have a better idea with the primary stats going forward than they do with what PvP power was in Mists. And I also think it's going to be an even better kind of tuning knob, right, for keeping things more balanced, hopefully.
Myself included, besides Eldikar here, like we've said a million times before, he's pretty much the only theory crafter here. I am horrible at math myself. Davis, yourself, I mean, how do you feel about, these basic changes to make it easier to understand? I'm actually pretty excited just because it's going to be, more raw stats and a little bit more accessible to the common player to understand. I mean, are you excited about these changes just to make it a little more accessible?
Oh yeah, like I too am pretty excited about that because I thought like everyone said, PvP power has kind of always been a bit of an awkward stat to really quantify.
Right.
I think, like people can grasp the percentage damage increase on like one attack, if that makes sense. Like you can be like, my attack does 150k and it increases by this percent or whatever, but at the same time, with the reduction your damage does with resilience, it ends up being quite difficult to quantify exactly how much your damage is increased. So, I'm kind of glad to see that it's
somebody's going to go back
easier.
Go ahead, finish it. Go ahead and finish. I was just going to say, somebody's going to go back and watch this on YouTube or listen to it on SoundCloud when we get it uploaded, and they're going to play a game where they take shots every time the word quantify is used.
We said that's a catchphrase for the night. Davis, go ahead. Go ahead, Davis.
I've completely forgotten my train of thought. It doesn't matter. But yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Quantify.
It's much easier to understand how much better a piece of gear is because it has more agi on it, if that makes sense.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Maybe ending this topic, maybe Eldikar later in the week can give us all a little math lesson over Skype. I sure in heck could use it. Moving on to the next topic, a post on PvP Live written by our very own Aridin. It's when should dampening start? Basically, it's right now at 10 minutes, and Aridin kind of wrote this great article with different talking points about, different reasons why maybe it should start at 5 minutes instead of 10 minutes. And I got to be honest with you, I don't know if I agree with you on this, but Aridin, since you are the author of this post, why don't you start off and, give us your argument about why dampening should be moved down to 5 minutes?
Well, so originally the article was kind of written as a kind of a counterpoint to Olivia Grace over at WoW Insider.
Right.
She wrote a pretty similar similar article that was 4 reasons why it shouldn't start at 5 minutes. So I thought, just in the spirit of competition and for the sake of argument and giving the community something to think about, I would explain why it should start at 5 minutes. Um, Now, it is one of those topics that's a little weird, like not everybody agrees or disagrees, whatever. But we're pretty, I guess, esports oriented here at PvP Live, and being at BlizzCon where they introduced this 5 minute thing, dampening. It was really exciting. It made matches exciting. So I kind of basically took that and ran with it, with kind of through the article and explain. And not only that, but in twos, playing, I don't know how many of you guys play DPS healer twos. That could get really annoying. Even sometimes in threes, like casters. It's just, so I'm not going to go and explain my whole article, but
yeah, right.
That's kind of the reasons why. It's just to quicken up the game a little bit. And also, probably one of the biggest points in there is dampening doesn't even really feel useful until a few minutes in anyway. So by the time you get to it starts at 10 minutes. By the time you're at 13 to 15 minutes is when you really start to feel it. So if it were to move down to 5 minutes, by the time you're at 8 or 10 minutes, then you're really starting to feel it, right? So kind of just a little perspective on it.
I do agree with the point where it's, I think it could be good for esports because they're faster matches, and they're more entertaining to watch. But, what's we always go through, divisions of 5. Why does it have to be 5 or 10 minutes? Why couldn't it be, and this might be a stupid question, but, why couldn't it be 7 or 8 minutes? Because that could actually make a big difference. If it was 5 to 10 minutes, between 5 and 10 minutes, that's a huge jump. But, you could possibly, this is something to think about, that they could possibly cut it down the middle and make it, a happy medium for everyone. But, I mean, that's a whole.
But nobody likes those weird numbers.
I know, that's what the problem is. People want 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes.
I think to remember.
That's true.
Not only that, but it's I think it's hard to understand 7 minutes in your head, right? Right. You can kind of say oh, it's been about 5 minutes, right? It's been about 10 minutes. Who says it's been about 7 minutes?
Yeah, you're right. I'm sorry I even brought that up. That was stupid. Actually,
it's a good point, though. It is.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Davis, jumping down to you this time. What do you think about this? I know you obviously read the article by Airden. When do you think dampening should start? Set at 10 minutes right now. Could 5 minutes do it? Would it make the matches more entertaining for yourself? And would it be good for a tournament platform as well?
The problem I have with it is if it becomes too much part of the meta, if that makes sense. Playing for dampening becomes too much of a thing. Because I really don't like wizard mirrors. I mean, at least it makes it shorter, but at the same time, it makes their damage harder to deal with quicker, and maybe you wouldn't necessarily lose if you were taking less, if you could heal for more. So that's the biggest issue I have with it coming earlier. But at the same time, I don't know. I like it for tournaments. I'm not sure.
Regular play.
Dave only plays FOTM, so his opinion does not matter. But basically, yeah, okay, we'll go for that.
We're both discounted here because I only play LSD apparently, so that's why I like it.
Yeah, you do only play LSD, so that's exactly why you like it.
Well, so Davis, let me ask you this. Now, you said it would be probably good for a tournament or esports in general, but why wouldn't you like it in a general arena match when you're playing at midnight with your buddies?
Because I do really worry that it would be something that people would specifically play for. They would turtle for until 7 minutes.
Until dampening happens and they just burst.
And then either burst or just that's when they start to get offensive. So that's what I really wouldn't like. So maybe we should see if in tournaments it becomes really common in the meta to play for it or whatever. But if it doesn't, then sure, it could go to live.
Ivor the Paladin just said in chat, let's just have dampening start at the beginning and get it over with. I think that's, let's just have it start soon as you like integrals of 5. Let's just 5 seconds after you enter the arena floor, dampening starts. That's it. Done, over with story. Eldakar, going to you.
I think I might be okay with that actually.
Just
get it out of the way
right at the beginning.
There we go.
And just move it out of the way.
I have
I guess I should ask you two different questions. Is, do you think this would be good for a tournament or esports in general for World of Warcraft? And would you like to see it happen in just general play every day?
I'd have to say yes and yes. I think
Okay.
5 minutes is a better start time for both tournament play and for live play. And I read both the article by Olivia and the article by our very own Eridan. And I understand a lot of Olivia's concerns, and she brings up some really valid points, particularly with regard to healer DPS really not being very equal right now, and some healers have much lower DPS than others. So
Heart of the Wild.
Yeah, so when it dampening gets stacked up really high, and a lot of healers are looking to do some more damage as opposed to just constantly healing, it does put some healers at a disadvantage. But I think that that's something that they could compensate for. So maybe this is the kind of change that we shouldn't see until the expansion, when they could rebalance healer DPS to be more equal across the board, so that it's not disproportionately impacting certain healers. But overall, I think the pacing of the game will be much better with 5 minute dampening. And like Danny was saying in his article, nobody likes to see these long stalemate matches that just will not end, where you have to just sit there and wait for dampening to start kicking in and then wait for it to stack up. I don't think anybody really gets much enjoyment out of that, except maybe people that are just trying to troll. So if it gets started earlier, all the better.
Right.
Let the matches end. Let you move on to the next one.
Well, I think we can all agree, Holinka, if you're listening, start dampening 5 seconds after you get out of the gates. Okay.
I have a question real quick for Noxy and Exil, our own moderator in chat. Do you guys have Kappa keybound?
Yeah, there's a lot of capitals flowing down.
You know,
Twitch chat right
Noxy actually has a notepad document of print screens of all the Twitch TV faces, so that he can paste them into Skype convos. That's how far this kid goes
As fast as
into making sure he can show his exact facial expressions.
You can Twitch face in Skype too. That's awesome.
Before we move on to the next topic, I want to remind everyone, please go to pvp-live.com, bookmark that website, follow us here on Twitch, and follow all of us on Twitter. Our Twitter tags are right down below us. I promise you we have some exciting things coming up as as our company goes overall, and tons of content. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt the podcast with this, but Eridan and JXL, our moderator in our chat, you guys have been doing an amazing job on
thank
content.
you, sir.
There are multiple, if you guys don't go to our website, go to it daily. There are multiple PvP related posts on there daily. It's an amazing job. Honestly, thank you, Eridan, for doing that. And
Yeah,
Jay,
thank you. Thank you.
Also, I want to point out, too, we're always interested in having guest posters. We're always looking for new bloggers, too, but, if you don't want to have a full-time commitment, we're always looking for guest posters, and that kind of actually ties into our next topic. Pookie actually guest posted on our PvP Live website. If Jay could link it in the chat, that would be great. It's about, and this actually kind of, hits close to home for myself. If you guys don't know, I'm a huge fan of random battlegrounds. I love him. And, basically his post is about, the queue times that we see. I don't even want to say recently. It's always been like this on the Horde side, at least. And,
well, not always.
Well, not always. I'm sorry.
For a while now.
For quite a while now. And Holinka responded to a tweet about Horde queuing, and he basically responded, says, the problem happens even more if you opt out of unpopular BGs. He said, looking into options. I've faction changed 2 Horde characters over to Alliance just because of this problem, and I know it's not helping. Well, maybe it is helping. I guess it is helping.
It's helping you.
It's helping me, right, sure. But, before, I'm actually going to weigh in on this myself. Could a possible solution be just remove the unpopular battlegrounds? Because, I mean, there's a pretty strong consensus. And obviously we haven't done a poll or anything, but just from everyone I've talked to at PvP Live and our viewers, there's a few battlegrounds out there that people just are not fans of, and they automatically opt out, especially if you're Horde. AV obviously being one of them. And I'm not saying remove AV, but, there's a couple ones that, aren't the most fun. Davis, starting with you this time. What do you think about, you obviously are a Horde character. what do you think about the queue times in random battlegrounds? And I know you're arena.
I'm actually alliance on most of my characters now.
You changed. Oh, geez. I feel like an idiot.
Traitor.
But it's different in EU. It's different. Everybody plays alliance in EU, so.
Yeah, pretty much. So,
I mean, as an avid arena player, and I'm sure you don't play that many random battlegrounds, but I mean, how do you feel about queue times?
I try to do them. I was talking to Jeff about this earlier, and it's the same in US as it is in EU. So I think the problem is with the factions and why people roll certain factions, and I think people who roll Horde want to PvP because they're more likely to be like, I want to be the bad guy. And people who roll Alliance would rather kill dragons because they want to spread justice throughout the world. So that's why.
So wait,
Alliance lose like every battlegrounds unless it's like a raid, and then Horde win every battleground unless.
So it's like that in EU as well.
Yeah.
Even with many of the top players being Alliance.
Yeah. I've really short queue times on Alliance and really long queue times on Horde, and Horde win like WSG and all those battlegrounds all the time, and AV and stuff like that are only won by the Alliance mostly. Well, that's what it feels like.
Pretty much how it is in the US.
This is obviously a topic we've talked about before, especially, like I said a million times, I love random battlegrounds, and this is actually an exact thing that we've talked about. Noxie in our Twitch chat just said, solution, make everyone able to play with everyone. What he's saying is, obviously allow Horde versus Horde factions, and I know you guys are kind of against it from what we've talked about before. I'm actually for that completely. I don't see a problem with it. Eldakar, going down to you, actually touching first on that topic. What do you think about faction versus faction?
Well, I was originally for the idea, but I believe we've discussed this before.
We have.
Like I said,
I think even just last week.
Yeah, it was last week.
Yeah, last week. But like I said last week, just in a quick summary, I'm concerned that we would have a migration of all the PvPers in a given region just to one faction, and that may draw other players to that one faction, and that we may end up with a huge disproportion in the number of players on one faction versus the other. Probably more players on Horde than Alliance. Mm-hmm. But I think the developers are going to resist the idea of doing that as long as humanly possible. They've said multiple times they think that one of the high overarching fantasies of the game is the idea of Horde versus Alliance. And Battlegrounds are really the clearest example of that. And I know in rated Battlegrounds, you can do Horde versus Horde, but in random Battlegrounds, if they made it Horde versus Horde, Alliance versus Alliance, I think we'd really lose a lot of that sense of Horde versus Alliance throughout the game. And it would really just be a lore type thing and not really reflective of gameplay.
Well, Eldakar, let me ask you this. What do you think about what I said about possibly removing maybe some of the more unpopular Battlegrounds? Could that be a solution?
Well, the thing is, the Battlegrounds that are unpopular for Horde, Isle of Conquest, and Alterac Valley are the Battlegrounds that the Alliance pretty much always win.
Right.
So they're very popular for the Alliance. So I don't think there's Battlegrounds. Yeah, I don't think there's Battlegrounds that you could universally
just
remove
dismiss
and nobody would complain about.
Right.
I know that even among the Alliance, Isle of Conquest isn't really that popular as a battleground. People just like it because they tend to win it. And I think Strand of the Ancients is probably something like that, although it has improved with the changes that we saw this expansion. Mm-hmm. But I think just going through the battlegrounds and trying to revise them, particularly the ones that have high win rates for a particular faction, try to get them to a more balanced state so that people don't want to opt out of certain battlegrounds. And I think that along with possibly some incentives for people to play in battlegrounds where their faction is not currently queuing in sufficient quantities would be ideal. So the Horde would get bonuses for queuing for AV, and the Alliance might get bonuses for queuing for everything else.
Airden, going to you overall, I mean, what do you think about, random BG queue times as a whole?
Well, again, I covered this last week a little bit. I think I mentioned this, but when I just have the urge to random BG, I log on my Alliance characters because can't be asked to wait 9 minutes, right? But this, my thought on it is I do kind of agree with Jeff in that, the people that are still holding on to Alliance for those queue times might just say to hell with it and go Horde, right? If everyone were allowed to queue into each other. This might be a little unpopular, but I think racials are to blame. I blame racials. And
elaborate, please.
So, every race obviously has their kind of unused or sort of special racial, and the Horde have really strong racials between, Orcs, Blood Fury, Undeads, Will of Forsaken. I mean, Alliance, they still do, like, every man for himself. People still from time to time complain about it, but without, like, crazy PvE trinkets, it's not as strong as it was in, like, Season 11 Cataclysm, right? But I think, like, at this point in the game, this many years in, I don't think people really, or people that are very serious about the game, don't really have a faction bias anymore. They just want to go where they're going to have the most advantage, right? PvE and PvP alike, both of them. So, and I think racials are kind of the culprit for that. Because people just want the advantage.
That's a really good point. I mean, it seems like it's a really tough topic to fix, and I'll be super interested to see, in Warlords what the PvP team does to try to maybe remedy the queue times for Horde, because it's not fun, like you said, Aridin. When I want to jump into a match, I want to get in there within the 1 to 2 minutes, and sometimes those queue times go up to 15 minutes. For random BGs on Horde, obviously, but it'll be really interesting. Hopefully, they figure out some kind of solution. And I know you guys hate the faction versus faction, same faction versus same faction, but maybe they could. I don't know. It's a tough subject. I don't even want to talk about it anymore. I'm pissed. No,
it is. It's touchy. Like I don't feel like there is one good answer to it. Like you have to take into account many things to do that, but. Who knows? Maybe the Herd will move to the Alliance next expansion, and they'll have long queue times. You never know.
Yeah,
it's kind of how it's been in PvP. Like with the PvP community, like one group of people decides that they want to play on this faction or this server, and everybody else follows, and it happens all the time.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So some of those top players, they figure out that they like the racials on one faction, or they just feel like playing on one faction. They transfer over there. People are like, why'd that guy transfer over there? They must be an advantage. Yep. So then they transfer over, and then all their friends transfer over. Everybody that wants to play with those people transfer over. And with the barriers between servers breaking down, we've got the potential for huge population swings from side to side if that happens again.
Yeah.
Lemming effect. Yeah, and I'm sure it will too. But
at the same, with all this like introduction of like getting free 90s, there might be a lot of people who use their free 90 to have something of max level on their other faction.
I'm sure that's going to happen a lot too.
So there might actually be some balancing out that goes on.
Actually,
maybe.
Davis, that's an excellent point too, because you got to think about it too. Especially some of the PvP or whatever, it doesn't any World of Warcraft player that are set in their class, and that's the only class that they want to play. Who knows? Of course, yeah. Maybe they will just roll an Horde or Alliance on the other faction.
Yeah,
so
actually,
same that's
class.
That's a really good point. I never thought about that. Well, maybe that could actually solve some of the issue. I don't know if it's going to solve it all, but we'll have to wait and see. Obviously, going to our last topic for the evening. Another post on PvP Live written by JXL. The cooldown stacking changes. Holinka stated on Twitter that they want less cooldown stacking, and they will be reducing the number of stacking procs and cooldowns from a variety of different sources. Eldakar, starting with you, what do you think about this post? What do you think about the stacking changes to cooldowns?
I think it's a good thing, and I think we actually touched on this topic as well at one point, but really, if you're using all the cooldowns together, why are they even separate cooldowns? I understand some things like boosts that come from an item as opposed to boosts that come from a skill. You might want to leave those separate. But for the most part, anything that's tied to skills and abilities that are frequently used together, just combine them into one or remove a bunch of them and buff one of them. there's no reason to have all of them separate if you always use them at the same time.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. And limiting your ability to stack these cooldowns, like if they made it so your big cooldown from abilities didn't stack with your big cooldown from items, it would make it easier for them to introduce cool cooldowns to items without worrying about people stacking that with some class ability that's going to make it wildly overpowered and start one-shotting everybody with Swifty macros. So I think less stacking, more fun.
R.I.P. Swifty, 2004 to 2014.
Sorry, Swifty.
That's the end of your run. Davis, going to you. What do you think about the changes incoming to cooldown stacking?
I agree with cooldown should just be merged if you always use them at the same time, but there would also be problems with that, and they would have to be balanced, because the issue is that the cooldowns happen at the same time. If you know what I mean, the issue isn't that it's 2 buttons, so they would need to tune it so that you both affect, like you could Bloodbath Bladestorm, but it wasn't as OP as Bloodbath Bladestorm technically is, even though it's not technically that OP. I mean, I play Shockwave all the time, but what I'm saying is I don't want people to do more damage just because they only press one button, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, yeah.
So, I would still like there to be different buttons to press, and I wouldn't like people to have long cooldowns either. Because if you can imagine, like, if they just stopped cooldown stacking, and then you could have 10 seconds of one cooldown, and then 10 seconds of another cooldown, and then 10 seconds of another cooldown, then it wouldn't... Like, I don't think it would improve the game, because it would just be... People would always be within some sort of cooldown, if that makes sense. So, I don't think that would be better.
That's true, JD, but if you had all the cooldowns doing very different things, like if you had a cooldown doing lifesteal, a cooldown that boosted your crit chance significantly, a cooldown that boosted your damage, a cooldown that boosted your speed, and you couldn't use them all at the same time, then choosing which one to use when could introduce an aspect of skill to the matches.
I mean, I certainly understand that point of view, but at the same time, if things are... I don't know, I feel like there will always be some sort of flow to World of Warcraft, and if you have cooldowns that aren't able to be stacked, then, especially in PvE, I mean, I know we're PvP focused, but in PvE, people would just press them one after another. And I think there should be something interesting to enable you to use the cooldown, if that makes sense. Like Shadow Dance, you can't randomly pop. People will argue that you can randomly pop Shadow Dance, and I'm watching all of you, but like you can't just randomly dance if everyone's on Stundia or whatever. Then it's not really worth it. But so I like it when there's cooldowns have a purpose to be used, rather than they just increase your damage or something like that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, JD.
Aridin, it looks like you have a ferret on your shoulders.
It's a cat, man.
Oh, looks like a ferret. Aridin, what do you think about the cooldown stacking changes? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a good change. Honestly, like some of them are just really ridiculous.
Give an example. What's a ridiculous one?
Well, I mean, warriors are probably the most obvious, especially like orc warriors. You know, you got Blood Fury,
sure.
Bladestorm, Bloodbath, or Avatar, whichever one you choose. Recklessness, Skull Banner. You know, you got a ton of these huge cooldowns in one. But I kind of think like they had the right idea with, for example, like the on-use trinket and engineering gloves, where you can't, you know, one puts the other on cooldown for the duration or whatever, 20 seconds. Maybe it might feel clunky to have like a bunch of them on that shared thing, but I think that's definitely the right idea to make them unusable while something else is being used. But yeah, it's really. I mean, I really don't have much to say about this. Honestly, it's a good thing. I mean, really overall, if you look at the big picture, they're rebalancing everything, all the damage people are going to be doing, right? So it kind of, yeah, go with it. Let's see how it turns out. We got beta, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's there's going to be depending on how the NDAs go and everything, and who gets in betas or whatnot. But man, I'll tell you what, how much information are we going to have to talk about once the beta is released?
Too much.
Right? I mean, it's going to be overwhelming. We're going to have to do a 4-hour show probably the day the beta is released. I mean, I don't even know how we're gonna do all that. But yeah, that's pretty much all the topics for the day. Man, I don't even know what to say. The chat has been amazing today. Thank you so much, guys. Like, everyone in chat, you guys are so interactive, and it's awesome. I mean, I can't explain to you how much we appreciate that, and I'm sorry if we don't get to every comment or question, but thank you so much for interacting in chat. And
Jason, real quick.
Yes.
Before we end the show, we did have one person on Twitter responded.
Oh my god, I did. I'm sorry. I don't want to.
Yes, it's a question. He wanted us to talk about this subject. So
I do. I have it right here, actually.
Yeah, we should talk about that. I think.
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. Derek, before we end this, real quick, one more subject. Derek Koning on Twitter asked us to discuss crit modifier change in Warlords of Draenor and the effects the change has on specs that rely on crits to have effective damage. Parentheses, elemental shamans, and arms warrior. I'm actually going to jump right to Eldakar on this because he said specifically that he wanted to talk about this. Go ahead.
Well, I know on the surface it seems like it would disproportionately impact certain specs like frost mages and warriors that depend on crits to do their damage currently. But you can't take this change in isolation. You have to realize it's part of a bigger picture and a lot of different changes that are coming down the pipe. And since this is coming in an expansion, they've got the opportunity to rebalance all these different abilities, all the damages, all the numbers, so that you're not necessarily coming out behind if these numbers are nerfed. I mean, classes that currently depend on crits, they could have the base damage of those abilities increased. They could have base crit chance increased. And there's a number of different ways that the developers can approach it to make sure that you're still effectively doing the same amount of damage relative to other classes than you were before, but it just won't be as bursty. It'll be much higher sustained and not quite as high burst, which will make it much easier for them to balance out health pools and the length of fights, because they won't have to worry about these massive crits that are taking out 75% of somebody's health.
Aridin, it seems like you want to kind of touch base on this topic as well.
I mean, Eldakar said it really well.
Yeah.
I think as far as how it will affect other classes that are relying on these crits, I mean, they're going to tune around it. They have to, right? They're going to change talents. They're going to do something that makes it feel similar to how it does now with higher crit chancer. But also, now, the thing to keep in mind with that as well is they're not maybe lowering crit chance. They're just lowering crit damage. So, for example, arms warriors that proc enrage on crit from their mortal strikes and colossus smash. It's only lowering the damage of the crit. It's not lowering the times that you crit. So you're still going to be getting those enrage procs. Or same with lava bursts and with elemental shaman. So I don't really think it's much to worry about. It's just going to be less bursty damage. Is all.
Davis, I mean, what do you think about crit modifier changes in Warlords? Do you have any comments?
I'm not keen on it because rogues have always had like extra crit damage, but at the same time, I guess it'll make the game better. So I should let go of my giant eviscerates and just pray for the game to be better for other people. Just take this one for the rogue community.
Oh man,
take one for the team.
One for the team. But yeah, in general, I agree with what everyone else has said.
On that note too, Danny, I'm glad you caught me on that. I actually missed that note. It was kind of flowing below my note sheet. But yeah, if anyone has any talking points or questions that you guys would like to hear us talk about on this podcast, please feel free to tweet any of us on our Twitter handles right below or at PvP Live. We'd love to talk about any subjects you guys are interested in, so please. Again, wrapping up, thank you so much to the chat. You guys were awesome. Thank you for the communication. Thanks to Athlete, Snuggly, Blitzkrieg, Hotted. Thanks, guys, for coming in the chat. Those are my shout-outs for the evening. Davis, actually, starting with you. how about any last-minute shout-outs for the end
Shout
of
out.
the podcast?
Shout out to Spudsy for giving me some free points earlier today.
Oh, there you go.
Ooh.
Oh.
Bang, bang.
And shout out to my guild for wittering on in guild chat about the podcast. And yeah, everyone else who's been in chat. Nice to see you all. And all of you guys that have been here with me.
Thank you, Davis.
My pleasure.
Airden, going to you. Any last-minute shout-outs before we end?
Yeah, of course. Shout out to Chad as always. You guys are. I mean, every week I think it gets better, right?
Absolutely.
Every week I watch this chat, and there's just I feel like I'm never like addressing the camera because I'm always looking at chat. You guys are rocking it. Big shout out to Exil, one of our moderators. Link on top of those links.
For sure.
Great job, buddy.
Yeah.
And yeah, to you guys as well. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, I just want to comment too. Like I said before, the chat's been growing. You guys interacting with us is why we're doing this. So it makes us all super excited. Eldakar, going down to you. Any shout outs, comments?
I've got to say a shout out to the chat as well. Like you guys said, it gets better every week, and there's just more interaction, more great discussions on what we're talking about and other related subjects. I think we had like 5 or 6 different points brought up by the chat in this podcast, and that's fantastic.
Yep.
And a shout out to Halinka and Laura as well. Keep giving us more news.
Please.
Keep working on it.
Yeah.
We love it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, guys, thank you.
And beta's next week. Next week.
Oh yeah, I'd love that too.
Yeah, that's what the word on the street is, right, guys? Next week?
Yeah.
Kind of the rumor.
Anyways, for all your PvP related news, please go to pvp-live.com and bookmark that site. Until next Sunday, guys, thank you from all of us at PvP Live. Good night.
Thanks, guys.